as you know, we've also got Brett. There he is. I heard
Hey.
I heard
Hey.
he's there.
How are you,
is.
Mr. Weiss?
I'm doing well, thanks. Just trying to figure out this technology stuff.
Oh,
I'm
no,
old
yeah.
school.
No, you're good.
You won't have to worry about it once Skynet takes over. Then we're good to go.
It's all over from there.
Yeah.
So, Brett, you're going to just see me, unfortunately, in Zoom. You have to look at my bald head for the next 45 minutes or so, but you'll also
I'll survive.
You'll survive. It's not too shiny right now.
Let us know if you get a glare.
Thanks. But you'll also hear two other voices, too, that people can see watching on the stream. So we've got both Kevin Molnar and Kevin Cabarello as well, who might be firing away some questions. So
How's it going,
Hey, guys.
Brett? Glad to have you here.
Definitely.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. All I see right now is the Cleveland Gaming Classic logo.
Oh.
Well, that's a plus.
well,
Yeah,
that's a plus. Yeah.
and
Well,
I can see myself.
oh, that's all right. Well, we can see you. People on
Okay.
on the stream can see you, so it's probably better that
For
way.
better, for worse.
For better or for worse, anyway. So, but yeah, thanks for joining. People that don't know you, you mind telling us briefly about yourself, who you are, and what you do, and why you're here.
Well, I've been gaming forever, since 1975, since I discovered Pong and Midway's Gunfight in the arcades. And then Christmas of that year, my cousin got Pong, and that blew me away. I didn't know you could play video games in your house until he got Pong for Christmas. And then I, got a ColecoVision in '82. All my friends had Ataris and television, and I've just kind of grown up pretty much stayed current with each one. And I've been interested in reading and writing since I was a kid, thanks to my mom being interested in reading and taking me to bookstores. So those two things just merged. And I've been writing professionally about video games since 1997 when I started with the All Game Guide.
That's pretty cool. It's cool when like
Thank you.
Yeah, when you do like as a child and like your parents' influence, like you said, going to bookstores and stuff, doing that.
Mhm.
I remember doing stuff like that, going to the library and picking out books, and then it turns into it's obviously a passion, then it turns into something, which is a cool story.
Oh, yeah, thanks. And I've written, just finished my 11th book, I believe it is, the NES Omnibus Volume 1, which
goodness.
is, I have the advanced copy here, and the book will be out early to mid-December.
That thing is ginormous.
I ordered that.
That is awesome.
I think I
Oh,
backed
thanks.
that. Yeah, I backed that
wow.
on Kickstarter a couple months ago, so I'm excited
Oh,
about
I
that.
appreciate that.
But I think that's A through L, is it?
A through L. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was going to be A through M, and the publisher realized that was too weighted. It was going to be, the two books were going to be two different sizes, so they made it A through L. Because my SNES Omnibus books, as you can see here, that worked out A through M and N through Z. And then for just the way the library was, A through L worked out with the NES.
That's funny.
So-
I would never thought about it because you have to think like there's
S?
probably a lot.
I feel like
games.
S has to be the
Like,
winner.
everything's either like Star or Super. Or,
Are you incorporating, like, does Mario fall under M or does Mario fall under S for
S,
Super Mario?
right?
Or
I go by the exact game title, so
Okay.
the Super
Good.
Mario.
so yeah, there's got to be
Yeah.
a lot of S's.
There's got to be a ton of S's.
Yeah.
And of course, the original Mario Brothers game is going to be in the second volume in
sure.
the NES Omnibus.
Wow. So how do you know offhand like how many are in that A through L? I can't even. I'm trying to. Like,
Over 350, 360, something like that, around that number. Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's basically a write-up for every U.S. release for the NES from A through L, supplemented by quotes from other sources, magazines, websites, things like that, and something I call Insider Insights, which are nostalgic stories from other writers. So my first series of books was actually the very first series of its type, the Classic Home Video Game series. This is sort of like an encyclopedia style
Oh
set
my
of books. There's 3 volumes, and they're just like, just a write-up for each game. Well, with the Omnibus book series I've started, we're talking, much bigger thing here with full color, screenshots and the whole deal. So I've, when my first Classic Home Video Games book came out in 2007, this was my first book in general, first book I ever wrote, 2007, Classic Home Video Games, 72 through 84, covering Atari, ColecoVision, and Intellivision and all that good stuff. That was my first book, and that was when retro gaming was just starting to take off with the Wii Shop channel, the Angry Video Game Nerd, and a number of other factors. eBay prices were starting to go up on games at this point, and so my book just sort of coincidence or whatever you want to call it, or just because I was in the retro gaming scene for a very long time, it sort of came out around the time when retro gaming was really starting to take off.
Now this
And it was the first book to completely catalog and describe and review, every game for such classic consoles as the Intellivision, ColecoVision Atari 5200. Leonard Herman beat me to the punch with the 2600 with his ABC to the VCS. But my book series had a lot of firsts as far as the Genesis, Neo Geo, TurboGrafx, and all those systems being fully covered for the very first time.
Now, did you get to play the majority of these games that you covered, or?
Oh, absolutely. I wrote for the All Game Guide beginning in 1997, and I did a ton of work for them, doing descriptions, synopses, reviews, and I was an editor for the All Game Guide as well. That was this massive database whose objective was to catalog, describe, and review every game for every console, every computer, and everything. So I did that for several years. And just growing up with all these games, I had to borrow games from store owners. I had to, order instruction manuals. I would get lots of instruction manuals online. I'd order a lot of NES instruction manuals, 100 of them off eBay, just because the cartridges are so accessible. The manuals with all the information is harder to find. So I had to pull a lot of strings and get a lot of, had to borrow a lot. And I've got a pretty massive game collection myself. So yeah, absolutely.
Any game specifically that you remember that gave you a really hard time, whether it be trying to find information or trying to find the right words, what to say about it in any of your books?
Well, there's definitely a challenge with a lot of the role-playing games because I'm not a big role-playing game fan in general. And so I'll spend sometimes with those games, but I'm not going to grind away for 100 hours. I just don't have the time. And so I'll do just sort of a general synopsis for some of those kind of games. But you still get a good idea of what the games are about. And games like Highlight and, there's just some real grind fest that just are very kind of a pain to go through. But then I have a lot of fun, with games I love, like, some of the more simple stuff like Donkey Kong and Mario Brothers and, referring to the NES and Popeye. And, so I have Gradius. I have a lot of fun writing these books, but there's definitely some slogs with some of these games. I'm not a big fan of the point and click genre or the, strategy games and all that. I prefer action titles, platformers, shooters and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's fun, but it's also a lot of work too.
Did you ever run into a game, you mentioned RPGs, but did you ever run into a game that's like, I just can't play this. What is this?
You have to. He has to play it.
It's so broken. Well, I have to. So what I'll do, if a game is just so broken or I'm just so terrible at it, I'll look on YouTube for long play videos.
Okay.
That way I can get through a level.
Yeah.
Without, I'll find out, how did they do that? How did they get through the level? Or at least I'll get to see some of the later levels that I couldn't access. Or I'll use cheat codes or whatever. And that kind of thing. So yeah, that comes up sometimes, and I'll just look online at the long play videos because you get a really good idea of what's in later levels. And if you can't access those, or you just aren't good enough at that game, or you can't find the right cheat code or whatever, you can at least see, later levels of the games. So it works out that way.
How long does it take to kind of go through that process? Like you've got to go through the entire NES or SNES library playing these games. Like how long does that take?
Well, each book, let's see. So my first book came out in 2007. It's 2020, and 7, 8 of my books are gaming books. So each one takes a couple of years to write, and I'll typically play the games in the evening, and then get up early the next morning, fresh to write. So that's how that process works.
And then do you take notes as you played, or like how does that process?
Yeah, I've got spiral notebooks all over the place. I'm taking notes as I write. And as I play the games, I'll take notes about, particular, the controls or the graphics or sounds or whatever, just as I go. And that without the notes really help. There's so many games to keep track of and to catalog and document and describe and critique and everything that taking notes definitely helps.
Is there a game you would recommend fully? I mean, just obviously you mentioned Super Mario Brothers and like some of the classics, but like, was there a game that hasn't gotten the recognition it deserves that you feel like it's one of the best games and I don't understand why other people feel this way?
Well, there's some NES hidden gems that people should check out. There's a game called Trog, and it's a maze game.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just look at you funny if you say Trog because that's kind of a funny name.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know about it. It's based on an arcade game. And I never actually saw it in the arcades back in the day, but I discovered it through the working on these books through the NES. And it's a fantastic maze game. And it's got some interesting twists to it that you don't find in just typical dot maze games. turn into a dinosaur and all this cool stuff.
Cool.
So I definitely recommend that. Bucky O'Hare is a really cool superhero game. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Power Blade's cool. You can throw boomerangs at enemies. That's a fun
my favorite.
Power Blade never got good recognition.
Really?
No, I don't know why. Like
Should have
Yeah, I think it's a little underrated. Mighty Final Fight is kind of a hard game to find, but you play little junior versions of the Final Fight characters. So there's definitely some hidden gems there.
Yeah, you're naming games that for some people would be like a mortgage payment to try and find here.
Yeah, some of these you may want to get through emulation. And the coolest story I have actually goes back to, it's not a great story or anything, but it's just a game that really made a huge impression on me. It goes back to my earliest book, Classic Home Video Games. 72 to 84, as I referenced. For the Odyssey 2, I was almost completely finished with the book, the Classic Home.
Like, how do you convey your ideas from in your head or in your notes to the page?
Well, necessity, really.
Okay.
Just sheer, having to pay the bills kind of cuts through any writer's block or anything like that. And writer's block, I don't know if that's the direction you were going, but
yeah, that was partially.
I mean, I've been doing this for a really long time. It was hard. It definitely was harder early on. I mean, I would stare at the blank screen, the blank page, if you will, and really struggle to know how to word a review or a synopsis or whatever. And I look back at some of my old, I kept all my old writings from the All Game Guide. It's defunct now, but I printed out everything I wrote. And I look at some of that stuff. It's pretty rough. And I definitely had a hard time articulating what I wanted to say, because that was, it was when I first really started taking writing seriously. In the 1990s, the early 90s, I started writing some short stories. But that never, that was just some small press science fiction and stuff. And the All Game Guide in 97, and then the Comics Buyer's Guide around that same time is when I really started writing professionally. And it was harder earlier on, but now it's just second nature. If I've got the notes in front of me, I can knock out what I want to say pretty, I don't say easy. It's still work. It's just, it comes more naturally now that I've done it for a long time. What they say is true. Read a lot, write a lot if you want to be a writer.
Okay, that's very compelling and helpful. Thank you very much on that. Do you feel like you run into kind of like the same games over and over? Like, do you feel like you say the same exact things about different games a lot? And if so, how do you?
That's
try
a good
to
question.
That?
I definitely had to reach for some adjectives. You definitely want to. You don't want to just keep saying this is a great game or this is awesome or something. So I try to mix it up a little bit, but then again, you don't want to sound like a thesaurus either, where you're just trying to reach too hard. So there's a fine balance, and I try to mix it up, where it just doesn't sound. If you're reviewing Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man, I'll look at the two and make sure, I'll try to make sure they're worded differently, so you're not just, Pac-Man's not gobbling dots, and then I don't say the exact same thing about Miss Pac-Man. So I try to mix it up.
You can only write so much about a bow on one of them. So.
Right. But I definitely try to, make it. I try to be concise and informative at the same time. So concision of, it's real important what words you put down. And I spend a lot of time editing, trimming and, just trying to get each one down to a science where you have all the information you need without any, fluff on there. So
I have a question too. Obviously, I think we talked about this in another earlier segment too. Like the video game community is very, not like other, unlike just the same I'll say as other communities too. They're very vocal, right? So if you say something, Brett knows where I'm going, right? Oh. So if you say something, and people have a different opinion, you can kind of go down a rabbit hole in some places.
Yeah.
So, have there been any of those type of situations where, whether you're, again, inserting your opinion in review or synopsis of a game and, has there been any kind of blowback or pushback or feedback from the community?
Well, it's funny because some people, so the first series of books are, on the cover, they're called reference guides, classic home video games, insert year here, complete reference guide. Well, some people complain, I don't want to hear your opinions in something called a reference guide. I want it to be like an encyclopedia or a dictionary where there's no opinions. There's just gameplay, gameplay description and all that kind of stuff. Well, I didn't think that would be much fun. I thought, if I'm writing about, let's say Super Mario Brothers 3 for the NES, it'd be real hard to write that without talking about how great it is.
Yeah.
And if I'm writing about something like, let's say, Snake for the Atari 2600, it's hard to write about that, with just about how broken the controls are and what a terrible game that is. So I definitely wanted to include opinions. That makes it fun for me. I think that makes it more fun for the reader. And I've also heard, some people have had the other end. They want more of my opinions. So with the omnibus books, I include quotes from other sources, like I mentioned. So I'll quote respected websites. I'll quote vintage magazines. You'll get a good look at the game of how it was perceived back in the day. Like Demon Attack for the 2600 was just absolutely slobbered all over at the time it came out. And so it's interesting to read reviews back in the day of that, just about how great it was, and just to does it hold up? So I like to. It does, by the way, but. I like to include my opinion and then other opinions by others as well. And the insider insights, the nostalgic stories that other people contribute to the omnibus books, they have their opinions as well. So I think the opinions just make the books more fun to read.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I have had some blowback, people saying that, and I've also, with one of my books, The 100 Greatest Console Video Games. This is my bestseller. This covers 77 to 87. So you've got the beginning, the Atari 2600 release, up to the first 2 or 3 years of the NES, the test market in the first couple of years of the NES. In that book, the bottom line, it's my opinion, what fits into the 100 greatest games of all time from 77 to 87. But I also weighed, just their, objective qualities and all that kind of thing. If you can call, if you can say a game is objectively great, if you can say that. But Mike Tyson's Punch-Out did not make the 100. It came out in 87, so it was eligible. And I get people like, are you crazy? That's a great game. That's one of the all-time classics. But it just never resonated with me. And I just never really cared for it. The pattern recognition and all that, it's just not my kind of game. I'd rather play just a basic, either a fighting game or
hold on,
a boxing game that's more like a fighting game.
The table just flipped over.
Yeah,
in the studio.
It's really, really funny you mentioned Mike Tyson's Punch-Out.
Did you watch, or I don't know if you were watching earlier, but Kevin Cabarello did Mike Tyson's Punch-Out blindfolded. So he flipped over a table.
I saw a little bit of that, yeah.
He walked out and he just,
But
he
no,
just rammed your car. I think he just rammed his car into the side of the house.
Well, let me tell you what. So at the back of this book, there's an appendix of the next 100. So I acknowledge a lot of the games that didn't make the cut that people think should be in there and that I think should have made the cut but didn't. So there's the next 100. So Mike Tyson's Punch-Out is in the appendix at the back of the book, and I do acknowledge it as one of the all-time classics, but it was just ultimately it was 100 games that resonated with me the most, that I considered the greatest. So it didn't quite make it, but maybe if it was the 101 greatest console video games, it would have been in there. But I do get a lot of blowback from that, and I'll happily take it. I'll admit that.
But that's understandable. And this is Kevin Cabarello talking. I don't think you have me on the stream, but for you to be able to write these books, it's because video games is becoming an ever popular, just growing medium. It's hard to, it's universally known. It's kind of like the music industry. Things are subjective. Like to be able to kind of write things without having either a personal bias or something along those lines is hard. So for you to come out and say, for example, that book where it's like, here's the 100 greatest console games from 77 to 87, it's people that buy the book, they may not, completely agree with you, but in the same token, you're giving them information about stuff that they may have never even considered, or, it's more information that, it gives them a broader palette, for video games, or maybe,
I included some dark horse picks in there, not because I shoehorned them in just because I genuinely think they're great, like Turmoil for the 2600, an obscure game that's just absolutely fantastic. And the thing is 77 to 87 was such an interesting year because you've got all these systems that nobody really thinks much about, like the Bally Astrocade, which has a game in there. Fairchild Channel F. It has a game in the appendix at the back of the book. There's a really good Pong type game that was really great for the Fairchild Channel F. It didn't quite make the cut, but it is in the appendix to the back of the book. And people have told me, they've discovered games. There are several Vectrex games in there for people that have never
Really?
played that console. It's got some spectacular titles. So those made the cut. And as people have told me, they've discovered, and a lot of people are interested in retro gaming and just, the pre-NES stuff, but they may not know much about it. Well, the 100 Greatest book will give you just sort of a guidepost. If you are going to explore the really old games, the Atari era, plus the first few years of the NES, what is worth playing other than the ones you've heard of, other than Super Mario Brothers, other than Pac-Man? What is really good from that time period? So I've got a lot of good feedback on that.
How much or how many times would you say did you have to revise that list of top 100?
Oh, it was a painful process. Yeah. It was really tough to really narrow it down because there's a lot of games in the back of the book, like Mega Mania for the 2600, a great fixed screen shooter. Didn't quite make it. And that was, I hated that. And that's one reason I created the appendix at the back of the book, just because there's so many games that didn't make it. Smithereens for the Odyssey 2. And there's just so many great games in the back of the book that didn't quite make the cut, like Thunder Castle and Tower of Doom for the Intellivision. Are two games that hardcore Intellivision fans just worship. They're in the appendix. They didn't quite make the cut. Tarzan for the ColecoVision, a great early beat 'em up. Before beat 'em up was even a genre. Tarzan, an original game from '84, ColecoVision made the back of the book. Those are great games that just didn't quite make the cut. So it was a painful process. So yeah, that was tough. It took playing and replaying a lot of games, and so yeah, it was difficult.
Cool. Switching over real quick from games, have you done? I've seen you've also written about. You're a big fan of movies, and so have you written about movies and done the same thing by trying? I
haven't written any. I've got a book called Retro Pop Culture A to Z, from Atari 2600 to zombie films. So that does have some movie writing in it. But I've written for Antique Week, a weekly newspaper, for over a decade, and I've written a lot of articles about movie collectibles. And within those articles, I can write a lot about the history. Like I did a cover features for a lot, like when Gone with the Wind had, I believe, its 70th anniversary. I did a big feature on Gone with the Wind. I wrote about Aliens, the 30th anniversary or something of Alien, I believe it was, and just a bunch of different movies. I'll celebrate their anniversary with Antique Week. You write about the collectibles and stuff, but within that, I'll write critiques and some history of the film and stuff. So I've done a ton of movie writing for Antique Week, and I wrote for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, a major metropolitan newspaper, for over a decade as well. And I'm still writing for Antique Week, but Star-Telegram, I don't write for them anymore because they just mostly use stuff they grab off the wire to save money. They reprint articles from other papers. But for over a decade, I wrote, movie roundups for the Star-Telegram. Like if a big movie was in theaters that had something to do with zombies, I might write, the 10 best zombie films, or stuff like that. So yeah, I've written for movies a lot for different magazines and newspapers and stuff, but I haven't written a book yet. Maybe at some point.
So kind of like the modern day equivalent to that would be the on YouTube, like the Watch Mojo top 10 so and so videos. So okay.
Yeah, I've done a lot of that kind of stuff. Plus some the Antique Week stuff. I mean, I've written up to 2,000 word articles about different movies for Antique Week, so that gets a little more depth there.
Any any special articles from Antique Week that stand out to you or anything like that? I mean, you mentioned Gone with the Wind and Aliens, but
well, it's funny, for Antique Week, I have written such an enormous variety of material for that magazine because I do auction reports. I do when you hear about one of these celebrities selling off all their items, I will do a report on that, what everything went for. Like the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's 50th anniversary, I wrote a big feature on that. Wow. And man, it's just a ton of stuff. I've done a cover feature for the Atari 2600 and for the NES for Antique Week. I mean, it is all over the map. And I've written about everything from old, in ancient China, they used seals that they would imprint on old documents instead of autographs. I've written about those. I mean, it's insane. I've written, just as a professional writer, you want, as a freelancer, you'll write about just about anything as long as it's honest paying work. Because, as a freelancer, you want these jobs. So I've written about just about everything.
Cool.
I want to ask.
It just happens to be video games are just about my favorite, most fun thing to write about, and movies too. Collect all the geeky stuff I love writing about.
I wanted to ask about the Encyclopedia of Kiss.
I
yeah.
too. Oh, I got a few questions on that too.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Like, are you a big Kiss fan? Like, what's the? I mean,
Oh
like,
my
you're looking at
gosh.
I'm looking,
So-
obviously at your publications and the history, and then all of a sudden there's one in there, Encyclopedia of Kiss. I'm like, there's definitely something there.
Right. Well, I mean, in 1977, I was 10 years old. That's when the 2600 came out, and all my friends got them. In 1977, 1978, Kiss was at the absolute peak of their popularity. And man, I could not have been a more hardcore Kiss fan. I mean, Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park coming out on TV in 1978 was like one of the biggest moments of my life as a kid. My best friend next door, we would play Kiss records on his old record player, and on the big, furniture type, console stereo in my house, my living room. I would play 8 tracks in my dad's truck, and he was very indulgent there. And I was just a hardcore Kiss. I had Kiss posters and magazine cutouts all over my walls. I made a Kiss scrapbook. I would hide, Kiss magazines and stuff in my school book so I could read about Kiss when I was supposed to be paying attention at school. I mean, you name it. I was a diehard. I would give my dad pictures from like 16 magazine and, Hit Parader and all that of Kiss, and he would take them to work and he would make photocopies for me. I would hand out at school for some reason. I mean, I was just like I was some kind of Kiss evangelist or something.
Yeah.
But I remember, I discovered the band in '75. I remember Kiss Alive and just hearing Nothing to Lose and Peter Criss's backing vocals on that and just thinking, wow, this is the most amazing stuff I've ever heard. And I grew up rock and roll. My sister's 7 years older than me, and my brother's 5 years older than me. So I grew up when I was a little kid and my friends were listening to the Bay City Rollers, I was listening to Rush, Mott the Hoople, Black Sabbath, and all this stuff. So hardcore, rock and Kiss fan from as far as I can remember.
Okay, I think the big question that follows is what makeup of which member are you donning when
Absolutely.
When you're following? Which one?
Well, that's funny. Which ones? What makeup have I worn of the band?
No. You're going to a Kiss you're going to a Kiss concert.
Who you rocking?
Who you rocking as?
Well, it's funny enough. I've never actually done that. I've never worn Kiss makeup, but my favorite all-time band member by far. Well, I don't know if by far because I love the band, but I'm an Ace Frehley guy, and I have been since I was a little kid. When I was a kid, most kids went to Gene Simmons. That was their favorite because of the monster and all that stuff and the blood and the fire. But man, I was Ace all the way because I was always a big science fiction fan, and I love his makeup and his costumes and just how he's kind of cool and spacey and aloof on stage, and just kind of loved his guitar and everything. So yeah, I'm an Ace guy for sure. Makeup and everything.
Favorite Kiss song?
Probably. I just did a YouTube video, my 10 favorite Kiss songs of all time.
Awesome.
And on any given day, it could change, because I'm just a hardcore fan. And all the songs of my favorites are definitely from the original makeup era, from 73 when they started to 79. But if I had to pick a favorite, it might be something like, Shout It Out Loud is top 10, Shock Me is top 10. Man, there's just so many. And, I get Rock and Roll All Night in Detroit Rock City. Those are so great, but I kind of got burned out on them, strangely enough. I don't get burned out on too much of my favorite stuff like Ozzy or Kiss and all that. But
overplayed.
Some of that stuff that actually got some mainstream plays, got a little tired of. But yeah. And there's a song on Love Gun called Then She Kissed Me. It's a cover of an old 50s tune. And people hate on that song because it's 50s and kind of cheesy, but I love it. That's one of my favorite songs. And yeah, it's just great. I love Destroyer and Love Gun, Dynasty, so many great albums.
Okay, this may be blasphemy, but I'm going to switch it up on it. You have the power to totally destroy and eliminate one Kiss song from existence. Are you taking one out of it? Is there just one song that's just, you can Thanos snap it out of here?
Burn Bitch Burn is really bad. That was a non-makeup era song. It's just got obvious stupid rhyming, and it's just an ugly song. So yeah, I could do without that one.
All right,
burn that bitch.
yeah. It's a lazily written song, and it's just dumb.
There's a
so I'll take
fitting
that one
answer.
out.
Yeah.
Very. You also too in that piece there you mentioned you do I know you do a lot on YouTube. I want to give you a chance because you do a ton of stuff not only in terms of publications and your writing, but you are incredibly active on your YouTube channel. I want to talk about that for a second.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I never really thought I would be doing this many YouTube videos, but the publishing industry is not what it used to be. Even 10 or 15 years ago, when I was just writing constantly, so many of the magazines and newspapers I used to write for are gone. They just don't exist anymore.
Right, yeah.
So, I mean, I'm still writing for Old School Gamer magazine, for Antique Week, and several other publications. I just recently wrote most of and edited a ColecoVision magazine that's going to be coming out pretty soon as part of the Opcode Vision Super Game Module. ColecoVision Fan Club is coming out, and I'm the editor of that magazine. But anyway, publishing is not what it used to be. So I don't have nearly as many writing jobs as I used to be. So I'm just sort of trying to evolve with the times. And so many gamers go to YouTube, just for entertainment or information. Right. And so I've transitioned over there. And I started a podcast a few years ago, but my podcasting partner passed away just unexpectedly.
Ooh,
and so, yeah, it was a weird deal. He was a good friend of mine, great guy, hardcore PS4 fan. And I would bring in the old school. He would bring in the new school. So we had kind of a cool thing going. And so I took a couple of years off from any kind of YouTube stuff because I was just really dismayed by that and didn't know what to do. And I got to thinking, so what would separate me from other YouTubers? And, there's so much gaming content and it's so crowded. I need to separate myself from the pack a little bit. And I said, well, I'm super old, unlike most YouTubers. So that's one thing that's different. And I grew up with this stuff and I have stories to tell. So that's why my channel is just Brett Weiss, but the logo is Tales from a Retro Gamer. And so I tell stories about, just what it was like gaming in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, just different either finds I made or Christmases. And I've had some pretty cool interviews on there. I just recently interviewed the executive producer of the Game Chasers movie.
Oh, okay.
Congrats.
Okay.
Very nice.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. He came over. He lives in Dallas, and I live in Fort Worth. So he just came over to my house, and we hung out. He's a good friend of mine anyway. And so, yeah, I just do all kinds of stuff. I've interviewed John Lester on my channel, and yeah, it's just been a lot of fun. I was recently on the immortal John Hancock's channel, so that was great. And but yeah, I'm having a lot of fun on there, and I don't think I would do it if it wasn't fun, because I'm not hardly making any money off of it. But it is nice exposure, and I've gotten some more readers. People have discovered my books through YouTube, and every writer wants more. Most, maybe some weirdos, notwithstanding, most writers want more readers and want to sell more books. So YouTube has helped, just bring, my branding, everything to more readers. So that's been nice. But overall, it's just a lot of fun. I'm having a blast doing it. I'd probably put stuff on there far less frequently if it wasn't fun.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's fun. You're putting stuff out all the time. I know I've been catching up with the people scamming over the Xbox Series X's and PS5s.
Right.
And
well, sometimes I'll do vlog stuff.
No,
I'll just get on here with no post-production, no editing, and I'll just get on here and talk about what's going on in gaming.
That's great.
But then, once or twice a week, I'll do an episode and I'll submit that to my editor, and he'll add some gameplay footage and some little humor and stuff. And that's great. I really appreciate it. It's a guy named James Pledger. He owns Pledger Designs, and you can find that online, where he does a lot of really cool branding and logos and video work and stuff. So he's been great.
Nice.
And my son, my older videos, my son would edit, and he was just doing it as a favor. He would put in screenshots and some stuff like that. So props to him for doing that for a couple of years there. He wasn't a fan of it, but he's a good kid. And I say kid, he's in his 20s.
Oh yeah.
But he's great. He really helped me. He taught me, about how to upload, because I'm old school, man. I am super old school.
Yeah.
So many of my friends are just so much more up on technology than me, and so he showed me how to upload videos to YouTube and how to edit things on your phone and within YouTube and all this stuff. And so I owe him a lot for just being on YouTube at all.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, how do you feel about the modern gaming world nowadays? Like, I mean, with the Call of Duties and all the the new stuff, what do you think it's like? They're taking a step forward with everything that they're doing with the cinematics, or do you think they're taking a step back where it's more about how a game looks as opposed to how it plays?
Well, I think there's positives and negatives to the modern scene. forgetting about independent projects for a moment, just talking about mainstream gaming, like going into Walmart or GameStop or whatever. Like back in the day, we'd go to Toys R Us or Funko Land. Just doing that. Modern games, they're harder to get into for me because you have to sit. I mean, sometimes it takes a couple of hours to even feel like you've really played the game because there's so much story and you're waiting, or either for it to update or upload, or to get to a point in the game where you're actually doing something. There's so much exposition where you're not actually doing much. In the old days, you put in a game, you're pretty much fighting for your life right away.
Oh yeah.
And I really enjoy that immediacy of the older games where you're like, you play Robotron or Defender or, even Pac-Man or Miss Pac-Man. You are on the run immediately and you are instantly having a good time. With the newer stuff, it's just more of a slow burn, and you're waiting for this, and it's just an investment of time. If you get a new game like Breath of the Wild, you play it for 2 or 3 hours, you really don't feel like you've done a ton. But if you play the original Zelda, you spend that much time with it, you feel like you've gotten somewhere. So anyway, and my sense of direction isn't the best. So with modern games, when you're, I'm actually better at Twitch games than I am at open world games because I've even at my advanced age, I have better reflexes than I do, than I do. Directional, I like my GPS in my car and my phone. That way. So anyway, I do prefer older games, but I do have a Switch, and my son has a PlayStation 4, and I'm thinking about getting a PS5 just so I can have be up on what's going on, and so I can play Rags Morales because I really like Spider-Man on the PS4. And I do some modern gaming. I love, just going back a few years, Bayonetta was phenomenal. Yeah. I love the Ninja Gaiden remake on the 360.
So it is Gaiden.
So I've played quite a few modern games and have enjoyed them quite a bit. And there's nothing, stuff like God of War. There is, you cannot go back to the old days and do anything like that. I mean, it's stuff like that. I love the 3D third-person hack and slash, like Maximo Ghost of Glory on the PS2.
Yeah.
So there are definitely
Maximo's
some
a great one.
Major advantages to the modern stuff. Just the epic sweeping music and the storyline and all that. So if I'm in the right frame of mind and I have some time, and I just want to kick back on the couch, I can get into some modern games. It's just probably 8 times out of 10, I come into my game room, I'm either firing up Atari or PS2 or something like that. So. But yeah, I'm all over the map, but mostly older stuff. But yeah, like I said, there's positives and negatives about the modern scene. But you mentioned Call of Duty. I was, other than Halo, in the old, it's funny, Doom, Halo, Dark Forces, those are great, and I had a lot of fun with those. But for some reason, Call of Duty and some of these other first-person shooters, I'm just not very good at them. I'm not a huge fan of first-person shooters. I just never. The controls just don't work for me.
It felt weird with Halo specifically because I felt like as the franchise progressed, it slowly turned into Call of Duty.
I love the first couple of them, and I call those first 2 Halo games the first-person shooters for people that don't like first-person shooters. They just have a great feel to them.
So you brought up one thing, and Kevin and I, we were looking at each other for a second, because I feel like you are hopefully the source of truth for this since you've written enough about it. Okay, so I've got 2 questions, and I'm doing a time check here too. Gaiden or Gaiden?
Ninja Gaiden or Ninja Gaiden?
Yeah, I know. I typically...
No, you got to lock in.
I go back and forth. I think it's probably Gaiden.
You're the guy.
I think that's how you're supposed to say it, but I'll find myself saying both.
See, he writes all these books. He's got to cater on both sides of the coin here. He has to play it safe. Yeah,
I said it's probably Gaiden. I say Gaiden's probably the way to go, but I catch myself slipping and saying both. Okay. So we'll put it that way.
And then Ryu or
definitely Ryu.
Ryu. Like rye bread.
Like rye bread.
Rye. That's what I've always said. I may be wrong. I've heard people say Ryu. I've heard very important people say Ryu, so I could be wrong.
I just figured if we're going to ask, you'd probably be the guy that would know.
I got a stupid one. Is it Guile or Gully?
Guile.
Blanca or Blanca?
Oh,
Definitely
we
got it.
stop.
We'll be here for
Blanca.
another hour.
Oh goodness.
I'll say Blanca.
Ken or Keaton?
No, stop.
Okay.
Now we have derailed. This has been great, Brett. We appreciate you coming on. Sorry about
Yeah.
the little technical hiccup we had there too, but we recovered. We've been doing
Happens
this.
all the time.
Yeah, we've been at this for almost probably closing on 20 hours now or so. So.
Well, I appreciate the marathon efforts you guys are doing.
Yeah,
Appreciate
so
you being on with us.
Sincerely,
Happy to do it.
appreciate you being here. Is there anything you want to plug before you go? You know, where people can check you out, follow you on social media, websites, YouTube channel. Go ahead and plug away.
Absolutely. So, going to keep it simple on YouTube. Just look for Brett Weiss. You can see the spelling right there: BRETTWEISS. Just subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. It's free and easy. And if you want to do a deep dive and check out my books, just go to brettweisswords.com. You can find links to all my social media and my books where I can, autograph books. I can send you one in the mail.
Yeah.
Very good. And then the book coming out, it's NES Omnibus. It's A through L. And do you have a set date on that coming out next month, or?
NES Omnibus Volume 1. Amazon says December 8th,
Okay.
but I'll probably get my copies from the publisher around then. And then I will be mailing them out as I sign them. So just look for it in early to mid-December probably. And it is, if you want a signed copy direct from me, just go to brettweisswords.com. You can find the link to all my books. And with books I send out in the mail, I will typically send extras, like maybe one of my signed Twin Galaxies cards or a magazine or something else, just to get just a little bonus item or maybe some other signed item or something. So check it out.
And there's, I don't even remember how much I paid for the eighth row. Like, was it around like 50 or something?
It's a $50 book.
Yeah, it's super reasonable. I mean, like you
massive
have that prop.
hardcover book with over 2,000 photos.
It's hard. Yeah. So I mean, when I was looking, I'm like, this is, and I'm not just saying this, but it's hardcover. The photos and quality and the color, like. I was like, okay, yeah, done. Like, this is great.
A good Christmas.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
it is by Schiffer Publishing. I'm going to give them a shout out.
Okay.
They do.
Cool.
Now, I submit obviously the text and I submit the images as well. But Schiffer designs the book. They have the book printed. They publish it and everything. So it's very perfect. This is a major publisher that has all their books in store, or a lot of their books in stores and everything. My 100 Greatest book. This is Schiffer also. Every Barnes & Noble in the U.S. ordered at least 3 copies of this one, so that was nice.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, yeah, Schiffer, major publisher, so they definitely do quality work, very durable as well.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Brett. Really appreciate it, and thanks for helping us out by joining the stream and promoting what we're doing for United Cerebral Palsy. We'll let you go, Brett. Have a great rest of your evening.
All right, I'm happy to help, and thanks you guys for having me on.
Thanks again, sir.
Thank you, sir.
It was a pleasure.
We'll see you.
You bet. We'll talk to you later.
All right, thanks, Brett. So
You bet.
that was cool.
Another great interview.
Yeah.
I love how these interviews, it's like we bring somebody on, we talk about one topic, and then we just...
It just goes off the rails.
No, but in a good way.
Well, it's good, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So.
I was gonna. I kind of bit my tongue on it, and I'm kind of glad I did. When we were talking about Kiss, there was a part where Kiss went to professional wrestling. And
Dear, 2000s.
Yeah, WCW. They did a professional wrestler that represented Kiss called the Kiss Demon. And it's infamous. He debuted in
He
a
broke the
Kiss.
streak of talking about wrestling facts.
Yeah,
We should have had our own wrestling panel and sat here, but we don't have the time for
No,
it. But we've been
not.
able to fit it in a little bit.
I'm just saying that was.
But he was great.
Oh,
Yeah,
man,
so
another
there's-
fantastic.
Just very informative, especially on the first 3, 4, 5 generations of console gaming. That was great to have Brett on here today.
The only question I didn't get to ask him was, what's your favorite console?
I had that written down here. It was like Desert Island. You got one console. What do you pick and why?
I was going to ask him favorite console or favorite game. I could definitely tell. I think he's got an affinity for it sounds like whether the Atari or the television, some of that stuff. But I mean, he's written obviously extensively about everything. So
He seems really passionate about everything except for Mike Tyson's Punch Out, but withstanding.
He's getting a pass from me. That was a great interview. Seems like a great guy. I think, like I said, he had it in the appendix. He thinks it's okay. So I think he's okay.
It just didn't resonate with him, which is a fair answer. Not everybody's going to be a fan of.
Plus, he's the second interview we've had this weekend to name drop the Fairchild Channel F, which just makes me super happy.
That's
So
exciting, right?
So that was great.